Robert F. Williams, Accomplishments, Activism and Controversies. Robert F. Williams, 1925 to 1996, was a civil rights leader, black nationalist, and armed self-defense advocate. He was one of the most influential yet controversial figures in the black liberation struggle, known for promoting armed resistance against racist violence and influencing radical black movements worldwide. 1. Activism and accomplishments in America. A. Leadership in the NAACP and armed self-defense, 1950s to 1961. President of the Monroe, North Carolina NAACP, 1956 to 1961. Revived the chapter, making it one of the most militant in the country. Trained black residents in armed self-defense to fight back against KKK attacks. Organized Black Armed Guard, patrols, to protect black neighborhoods from white supremacist violence. Defended black women against white sexual violence. Led campaigns for black women who were raped by white men, but denied justice. In 1958, he defended two young black boys, 7 and 9 years old, in the kissing case, where they were imprisoned for allegedly kissing a white girl. Promoted armed resistance against the KKK. In 1957, Williams and his armed supporters repelled KKK attacks in Monroe, proving that black self-defense was effective. Declared, "We must meet violence with violence." B. Writing and an influence on black power movements, 1960s to 1990s. Wrote Negroes with Guns, 1962, one of the first books advocating armed self-defense for black Americans. Influenced Malcolm X, the Black Panther Party, and other black nationalists. Inspired future generations of activists to reject nonviolent resistance as the only strategy. Hosted the radio show Radio Free Dixie, 1962 to 1965, broadcast from Cuba to the US, urging black Americans to resist white supremacy. Played black nationalist music, speeches and news censored in American media. Helped lay the foundation for the Black Panther Party. The Black Panther Party, founded in 1966, was inspired by Williams's armed self-defense philosophy. Huey Newton and Bobby Seale studied Williams's work before forming the Panthers. 2. Controversies and legal struggles. A. Wanted by the US government, 1961 to 1969. In 1961, Williams was falsely accused of kidnapping a white couple during civil rights unrest in Monroe. He fled the US and lived in exile for 8 years in Cuba, China, and Tanzania. The FBI placed him on its most wanted list, calling him a dangerous revolutionary. B. Conflict with the NAACP and nonviolent leaders. The NCP expelled Williams in 1959 for endorsing armed resistance. He criticized Martin Luther King Jr. and other nonviolent activists for being too passive. While King sought integration, Williams pushed for black independence and self-reliance. C. Ties to communism and radical movements. The US government labeled Williams a communist sympathizer for seeking refuge in Cuba and China. He met with Fidel Castro and Mao Zedong, aligning with global anti-imperialist movements. 3. Organizations Robert F. Williams founded and was involved in. A. Organizations he led or created. 1. Monroe, NAACP 1956 to 1961, transformed it into a militant self-defense chapter. 2. Black Armed Guard, 1957, community-based armed self-defense group. 3. Radio Free Dixie, 1962 to 1965, black nationalist radio station broadcasting from Cuba. 4. Republic of New Africa, 1970s, worked with this group advocating for an independent black nation in the US South. B. Organizations he influenced. The Black Panther Party, 1966 to 1982, inspired their armed self-defense strategies. The Republic of New Africa, 1968 to 1970s, advocated black self-determination and separation from the US. The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, later SNCC leaders embraced his radicalism. 4. Countries Williams visited and global influence. 1961 to 1965, escaped to Cuba after the FBI accused him of kidnapping. Met with Fidel Castro, who gave him asylum and supported his revolutionary radio broadcasts. Used Cuba as a base to influence black radicals in the US. B. China, 1965 to 1969, left Cuba due to political disagreements. Mao Zedong invited him to China, where he met Chinese communist leaders, supported China's anti-imperialist stance and compared black struggles to colonial liberation movements. C. Tanzania, 1969 to 1970. Spent time in Africa, exploring the idea of black Americans relocating to independent African nations. Lived in Tanzania under Julius Nyerere's government, which supported Pan-Africanists. 5. Robert F. Williams's return to the US, 1970s-1996. In 1969, President Richard Nixon dropped the charges against him, allowing him to return. Taught black history and self-defense philosophy at universities. Continued writing and mentoring black radical activists. Died in 1996, largely forgotten by mainstream civil rights history, but honoured by black power activists. 6. Legacy and impact. Influence area. Details. Black Power movement. Inspired the Black Panther Party and SNCC. Armed self-defense. Showed that black Americans could fight back against the KKK and racist violence. International black liberation. Connected black struggles in the US with Cuba, China and Africa. Black media and communication. Pioneered revolutionary black radio and propaganda. Final thoughts. Robert F. Williams was one of the most fearless and revolutionary civil rights figures, advocating for black self-defense and international solidarity. Though controversial, he left a lasting impact on black power movements and armed resistance in America.